Alright, this video is about eighth note triplets, 3 against 2 polyrhythm, and 4 against 3 polyrhythm. To start, I'm going to play some eighth note triplets for you. Here we go. I'm sure you're familiar with these. You've probably played them yourself. Why am I bringing them up? Well, you kind of need to understand it to understand the 3 against 2 polyrhythm. Eighth note triplets, for example, are essentially like a 3-to-1 ratio. Most simple polyrhythms, like 3 against 2, 4 against 3, are just, ratios. It's a 3-to-2 ratio is what the 3 against 2 polyrhythm is. So, because we're already comfortable playing eighth note triplets, what we can do is play eighth note triplets and then just take the left hand away. Play eighth note triplets and take the left hand away. These are often called quarter note triplets for that reason, because it's like we're playing eighth note triplets, but it's like half as often, or like it's half the speed of eighth note triplets. So like that's kind of a way to think of it. So I've kind of showed you how to play it with the bass drum and on the snare drum, right? Like bass and snare together. So essentially your right hand, your right foot. What if instead of right hand, right foot, you did both hands? One way to do it is to go both right, left, right. 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 So you can go ahead and try that. Pause if you need to. You can also try both left, right, left. If that's a little more comfortable for you, or if it's less comfortable and you kind of want to be a little more flexible with what you're able to do on the drum set, try that also. That's the 3 against 2 polyrhythm. It's pretty cool. How are you going to apply this to the kit? So here's one way. This is essentially like a 6/8 pattern that I wrote in 4/4. But pretty much what you can do is just like our previous example. You take that, both right bass right is a way to think of it. Apply that to the hi-hat. Both right bass right, both right bass right. I forgot why we were here for a second. And then just play the snare drum on beat 2. That's like one application on the drum set. It's very triplety. Allows 3 against 2. You often use it to play quarter note triplets. Some, an alternative triplet. So it makes sense. Now we're going to move on to talk about the 4 against 3 polyrhythm. So what is that? How 4 against 3 works? We often talk about these things in a 4/4 context. So in 4/4 time, the way you typically see it is it's essentially you have something keeping time, like a bass drum, for example. We're going to play quarter notes with our bass, and then you kind of just spam dotted notes on the snare drum. That's one way to do it. So it kind of goes like this. If you had to represent it with 2 hands, you'd go essentially playing playing every 16th, but accenting all the dotted notes, starting with the very first one. We talked about it before, but the way dotted eighth notes work is it's like an eighth note, but it's 3/16 long. Eighth notes are typically 2/16 long. When you dot a note, you essentially take the original value, and then you add half of that value to it. So we've taken 2, we turn it into 3. So yeah, it's kind of like this. One way to play it, instead of the snare and the bass, is using 2 hands, just like in our 3 against 2 example. There's a helpful mnemonic device. It kind of goes, pass the gosh darn butter. Pass the gosh darn butter. you sort of want to decide which hand is going to be your 4, which is going to be your 3. So in that example, my right hand was playing the dotted notes, which is the 4. The quarter notes, which are the 3 I played with my left hand. So it's both right, left, right. Pass the guitar and butter. Or it's both left, right, left, right. Or both left, right, left. There it is. So when my right hand is the quarter, when my left hand is the quarter. So that's one way to play it with your hands. Where's an example where you can play this on the kit? You can have some kind of application. You can put this in a song, do it while you're jamming or whatever. The most readily available example is just kind of spamming dotted eighth notes with your bass drum while you essentially play this. Let me close that. While you essentially play this with your 2 hands. So I'll go ahead and play it here. Now, I want to show an alternative way to express 3 against 2 on the kit. What if we wanted to do 3 against 2, but we weren't doing triplets at all? In fact, we were sort of using like dotted quarters. Here's what that's like. So instead of doing funky stuff with the bass and the snare, I'm going to play the basic rock beat, but I'm going to open the hat for every dotted quarter, every 3 against 2 sort of occurrence. So here's what I'm talking about. So there's another way to represent 3 against 2. These polyrhythms are cool. They're pretty ubiquitous. You'll find them in a lot of different types of music. Yeah, a lot of popular artists, a lot of popular music. They're like they like to syncopate, and polyrhythms are another way to do it. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it helpful. Thanks so much for watching. Goodbye.